Greetings, everybody. How are you? We are still, this is Lee McCroskey, we're still in John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership. And so if you've been following along and listening dutifully to the recordings, you understand that we are on law number 8. And you know what? I have a good feeling about this particular broadcast. I just have this instinctual gut feeling that this is going to be a good one. You know why? Because we're talking about the law of intuition. Huh? So it ties in. The law of intuition. Now, how many of you, and we're all in sales, but how many of you have ever been with a client? You can raise your hand. And you just got this feeling, you just knew you were going to sell them. Anybody? Yeah. You're like, these people are going to buy. And sometimes you felt the opposite. You were with somebody and you had the feeling, I don't know, this isn't going well. So if you've ever had a moment where you felt like outside of selling, something wasn't right, maybe you got into a dark parking lot, you know, at the mall, and you felt kind of weird and you felt negative, you know, someone around you sort of flipped your switch and there was something that you knew something was wrong. That's your intuition at work. If you've experienced that before, you may have shrugged it off. You said, well, that's not logical. But all of us have these flashes of insight, these feelings. And that's what we want to talk about today. This is a super challenging law to teach, but I'm going to try to do that and give you some strategies to build your intuition, which you will be thankful for. But it's not an easy one to teach. It's like if we did the law of caring. I can't teach people to care. You know, you either kind of have that or you don't, but you don't, no one signs up for a seminar and says, I'm going to go spend $500 to learn how to care about people, you know? So we're going to talk about intuition, which is challenging. Now, as a culture, especially in the West, we have learned to believe that rationality is what we should, that's how you should make decisions. That's how you should think about your business. Anything that you do should be extremely logical, and that's true. But what about that inner voice that some of you feel from time to time, that gut feeling that something instinctual is happening underneath all the layers of logic, right? It's there. And so I thought, well, let's think about one of the people in the past, maybe a scientist who's extremely left-brained. And I'll pull a quote from him, Albert Einstein. Let's see what he says about intuition. I have the quote right here on my screen. He says this, Albert Einstein. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. He says we've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So, using your intuition every day, developing that intuition muscle will be useful to you, I promise. Okay, so let me give you a little more definition in case you're going, intuition, never felt it. My left brain is all that I'm about. I'm completely logical. I'm an engineer and an accountant, both. Well, this is from Inc. magazine. This is their definition. Intuition gives you all kinds of information you wouldn't normally have. This isn't the brain analyzing, they say. This is non-linear knowledge. It comes directly. It's a second kind of intelligence. And you want to use both your thinking brain and your instinct brain. And I was thinking back, what are some examples of well, it made me think of Star Wars. You guys remember Star Wars from back in the day? The first one where we're meeting Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and all the big characters there. You hear Obi-Wan Kenobi telling Luke as he's flying and trying to destroy the Death Star. You know, he makes a couple of passes and tries to shoot those photon torpedoes down the garbage chute of the Death Star, and he's missing because he's trying too hard rationally. I've got to, you know, I'm using my radar and whatever's on the scope. And what does Obi-Wan tell him? He says, Luke, let go, you know, use the force. That's kind of like the intuition side. So when he does that and he puts all his instrumentation aside, he gets the job done because he works through that gut feeling. So, okay, enough on Star Wars. John Maxwell says this, and if you're a note taker, here's a good note to take. He says that you develop intuition in your strength zone. You develop intuition in your strength zone, your strength area. That's where you get it. And in thinking about that and reading this chapter on the law of intuition, that made me think I've got a pretty good intuition about training scenarios, how to make meetings work. When I'm on stage in front of a big crowd, I know what I'm going to say. About 70%, I think I know what I'm going to say because I've thought about it rationally, but I leave about 25 or 30% random, where I just get a feel for the crowd, watch what's going on, get a sense of what's happening, and I can respond to what's going on. That's using some intuition. So that would be good if you sort of, if you, I know a lot of you women have already developed this. You've heard of women's intuition. If you're female, you typically, your radar is aware of things that men don't get. I mean, men are very two-dimensional, you know, but women, you can sense other things occurring. Sometimes you can meet somebody and you're like, I don't know, there was something weird about him. And all the guys are like, oh, he seemed like a pretty good guy to me, you know, and you're like, something was off. So that's your intuition speaking to you, which I would encourage. Okay. So let's talk about great leaders and intuition. Great leaders are ones who have intuition and use it properly to their benefit. You've seen, well, let's talk about sports for 1 second. We talked about Star Wars, might as well talk about sports. But I thought of the Edmonton Oilers and probably one of the most famous hockey players around, Wayne Gretzky, right? You may have heard of him. Wayne used his intuition on the ice. That was his strength zone. And so when they asked him, you know, how have you achieved this success in professional hockey? You know, he said, what was his big quote? I don't go where the puck is, I go where the puck is going to be. So that sense of, here's the movement of the players, here's the direction that we're moving in, I need to be here. That's using intuition. That's a big part of sports. Okay? So there's a lot going on in your left brain. There's a lot going on outside of that left brain. If you were with me last year, I used an example like this. It was the flashlight example. If you were in a room with no windows at night, you turned off all the lights, and you had a bright flashlight, the flashlight and what you shone that light on is sort of like your conscious brain. Your conscious is only aware of what you're making it be aware of. Like right now, if I said, okay, think about how your butt feels in the chair if you're sitting. You're like, you just shined your flashlight down there and you went, oh, this chair's hard, or this chair's soft, or I wish I could stand up, whatever. If you're in this dark room and you shone the light on a clock on the wall, you'd say, oh, there's a clock. Now, all of the furniture, everything is still in the room, and you could still wander around the room and bump into stuff. It doesn't mean it's not there, but that's like your subconscious, your other than conscious, the intuitive part of things. So your conscious mind can only handle about 5 to 7 bits of information at any given moment, but there's all this other stuff that's around you that you can be aware of if you pay attention to it and develop that. Okay? So natural ability, Maxwell says, and learned skills create an informed intuition, and that makes leadership issues just jump out at leaders. So as we're developing our skills through these laws, let's develop our intuition. How do you do that? Let me give you 4 ideas. Okay? So people are like, yes, finally, notes. I can finally write something down. Woo! Okay. These are what I borrowed from Dr. Judy Orloff, who is a professor of psychiatry at UCLA. So here's what she says if you want to develop that instinct to have a feeling, and you can use in sales. Number 1, she says, listen to your gut. Listen to your gut. Literally listen to it. And believe it or not, she says your digestive system can help you improve your intuition. There are neurotransmitters in your abdomen. So if you have a gut feeling, it's good not to ignore that. So check with your gut when you have to make a decision. Example, if you're hiring somebody, before you begin the interview, set an intention for your conscious and subconscious mind to work together to help you make a good decision. Okay? So notice the physical sensations in that area as you're interviewing them, and ask yourself how that person makes you feel. You can do this with clients. Do you feel queasy? Do you feel tight down there? Or you feel comfortable, at ease? Pay attention to your gut. She tells the story of she went into a big business deal, and one of her clients said his gut kept telling him to stay away from this guy, not to engage him, not to hire him. And he opted to wait and said, let's talk some more. It turned out that the guy that was interviewing with him was about to go into business. The guy he was going to connect with was an embezzler. So anybody can sit and tell you the right things. People can be pretty good liars, but if you pay attention to that intuition, that might give you a different signal. So listen to that if there's something that's not quite right. All right, number 2. So listen to your gut. Number 2 is observe your energy levels. Observe your energy levels. She says you got to pay attention to being around somebody that makes you feel tired or drained. That's on the negative side. Or if there are people that make you energetic and lively, if you have a client like that, obviously you look forward to that. But some people are energy vampires. Does everybody know somebody like that? Some of you that sold books with Southwestern, you knew some first-year people, some rookies who were energy vampires when they came to meetings. They just attached to your neck. We called them emotional vampires. And they would just drain you of all emotion because you're like, oh, I'm so tired after being with that person. So if that happens, pay attention to your energy levels and act accordingly. If you don't feel well around somebody, your intuition is telling you something. Okay, so check your energy with people and with clients. All right, number 3, Orloff says, capture your flashes. Capture your intuitive flashes. How many of you can raise your hand, have had an aha moment where you just were like, oh, and like the light bulb went on? Thank you for participating. And you just had this like, whoa, wow, out of the blue. Those moments, those flashes come really quickly. And if you say like, I need to call somebody, she says, do it. Or if you can't do it, if it's 3 a.m, you write it down, follow through, make sure you do that because your gut is telling you something about that. A lot of times I'll do that. I'll ask my intuition or subconscious to help me solve a problem, which sounds kind of weird, but at night, if I'm wrestling with something or something's bugging me, I tell myself, I just say, hey, subconscious, here's the deal. I'm going to sleep. Here's the problem. Please work on it overnight and give me some insights. Thank you. And then I go to sleep. Now, how many of you have woken up in the middle of the night, or maybe you've been in the shower, you're doing something different. You're kind of like, and all of a sudden out of the blue, bam, you've got this insight or flash. Has that happened? Or you've had this really good idea that hits you out of the blue. You can actually assign or ask your intuition to help you out. Because again, in the dark room analogy, all the furniture, all the stuff is still there. You're just not aware of it. So it exists, but most of the time we just spend, zeroing in with our conscious flashlight on certain things, and it doesn't help us. So use both parts, right? Number 4, Orloff suggests you do a 3-minute meditation or prayer. Engage in just 3 minutes of meditation or prayer. So getting 3 quiet minutes in a day can really help you get in touch with your intuition. No, and if that's too much, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, I can't even take 3 minutes. I've got to upload orders, whatever. If that's too challenging, just get off by yourself just for a few minutes. Unplug. Go for a walk around the office building, or duck into a bathroom, whatever. You just need to disengage and engage your intuition. A lot of people need to separate from other people to have quiet time. So getting 3 minutes is a great way to do it. Other people suggest, and I know some of you do this, you'll meditate for 10 or 15 minutes in a day where you're not listening to music, you're not doing anything, you're not filling anything out, you're just experiencing quiet. That is good to let that intuitive, your juices flow. If you're of the prayer type, prayer is a little bit different. Yes, you're quieting your mind during that time, but it's a lot more active, and you're essentially talking to God, right? Which makes sense. So meditation kind of clears the mind. Prayer is a little bit more active. So what I do is I just calm down, tell him what's on my mind. If some of you have heard of the best-selling author Max Lucado, Max says this. I kind of like it. He said prayer and meditation is really simple. Resist the urge to complicate things. Don't take pride in perfect sounding prayers. He said, don't apologize for prayers that don't make sense. No games. He said, just be honest. Tell God everything that's on your heart, or tell him nothing at all. I remember my best prayers, I prayed on the book field, and I was by myself. So it was quiet, and I just prayed this. You can write it down. Help! Help me! So some of you might be feeling that. If you're just getting started with LGFG now and you feel a little bit lost, do that prayer. It works. Help. But the point is getting some quiet time to clear your mind, maybe clear your desk, get away from people, and being alone is one great idea to develop intuition. Now, I've given you 4, but I'm going to throw in 2 more just as a bonus, because it's like me to give you extra stuff that you didn't expect. Here's a couple other thoughts that worked. Some years ago, I had one of our sales managers who was a very, this is at Southwestern, who was he was an engineer. So he had recruited a whole organization of engineers. And so they were extremely logical people, very left-brained, and that's all good. But I had just finished reading a book called A Whack in the Side of the Head. A Whack in the Side of the Head. And it was all about how to be more creative in everything you do. So he says, I don't know how to have, these guys are all stuck. They're all on a plateau. They're not selling that great. What are we going to do? So we had conference calls, and I had them all, he gave them all crayons, you know, the big box of Crayola crayons and paper. And so as we talked and shared thoughts, I had them color. They were drawing. So they would do a big scribble, and then they would fill in all the areas with different colors. So they made, a lot of them are like, I cannot draw. And I'm like, who cares? Just doodle, scribble, use different colors, pick out different crayons. And they started selling better because they were engaging a whole side of their brain and their being that they hadn't even paid attention to before when they were stuck. So that can be a great breakthrough for you if you're getting a little bit stale in your selling, is draw, you know, do some art, or keep a journal. Writing your thoughts and your feelings down on paper, even if you think you've got nothing to say, that helps your unconscious mind kind of open up. All right. And last thought, this is an easy one to say, difficult to execute. It is turn off your inner critic. Turn off your inner critic. Now, how many of you have an inner critic? This little voice in your mind. You know, in the old days, we would call it Mr. Mediocrity. It was just a voice that said, you can't do this. Why are you even trying? You'll never sell like him. You're not good enough to do that. That is your inner critic that's just feeding you garbage. And however you do that, if you can imagine a switch, just flick it off. Your inner critic never helps you be the best person you can be. So that was one of the suggestions from Carla Orloff, Dr. Orloff, was switch off that inner critic. If you can't switch it off, replace it with something a little more uplifting. That's where affirmations come in, or asking the right questions. Okay, so shut down that inner critic and move forward. So I've given you 4, if not 6, good ways to improve your intuitive mind. And so I want you to practice that this week. Pay attention to your gut, react to flashes and capture them. Really pay attention to your energy levels when you're with clients and with office mates. Pay attention to that because we're on the same team, right? And then be sure to have some quiet time for yourself to keep that growing and developing. So the law of intuition. I had a good feeling about this call. I think it went well. Actually, I feel it went well. Didn't think anything. Okay, there you go. So any feedback from the crew? And I'll close with a quote. Anybody have any comments on that or have used that? I know if your intuition grows in your strength zone, think about people whose strength, I mean, I think about Dimitri, who sold so well for so long. He has an intuitive, I know, gut feeling about what to say at what time, even if it seems weird or off the wall or off the cuff, right? Maiko talked about that yesterday with the Australian crew, how he's used his gut feeling to increase his sales. So anyway, any comments? Everyone's muted, so it'd be really hard to comment. Okay, Joel, do you want to unmute? Okay, maybe not.
They can unmute themselves.
Oh, they can unmute themselves.
Yes.
They have no comments. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for participating. It's always good. Here's my final quote for the day besides Einstein, and I'll send this in an image. It says, there is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. Thank you.